And I'm going to put you on mute, and then we're just going to go to the other side, the solo side. Hey, folks. My name is Girish Bali, and we are kind of live right now. Not kind of, we are live. And we are going to be live on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, and Twitter. Finally, the guest was here. There were some few technical difficulties earlier. We were not on time, but we're here now, and we're going to be talking to a great person today. So we'll be starting in a few seconds. It'll be how about if I talk to you for a minute here, guys? So whoever's listening, please do comment and subscribe to all the stuff that I'm doing, and or I should say not doing. And I release all the episodes every day. So please do comment all my episodes so far. I'm having a greatest time in the world, speaking with great people, especially today. Today is just mind-boggling. It's more like, I'm in a candy store right now and meeting this person. So it's great. Okay, so we're going to start in 3, 2, 1. Hi, folks. My name is Girish Bali, the host for Back to Basics, another Back to Basics for another week. Today, we're going to talk about comedy. And it seems like this person that I got in touch with, I don't know how many weeks ago, how many months ago, or whatever it is, but I'm just glad he's here. And he's going to share all the stuff that he talks about, what he has done and what he's not done in the comedy industry. And then we'll talk to him about his book and all the other extra stuff in there. So let's invite Art Bell into this show, and let's talk and let's chit chat with Art. Art, how are you? And thanks for coming to Back to Basics. Oh, you're on mute. You're on mute. Hey, Art.
Hey, Girish. Thanks for having me. Great to be here.
Absolutely. Before we get into the details of what you do, what you don't do, and everything else what we do, what does Back to Basic mean to you, Art?
Back to Basics? Well, I had a long and varied career. I worked as an economist. I worked as a consultant. I worked in the comedy business. I worked at another television channel called Court TV. Learned about the judicial system. And you know what? I mean, really, the basics are what served me best. The basic understanding of what management is, of what leadership is, and how to foment creativity among your staff. All of those things served me well in every job I had, including, right back to the beginning. I mean, I mowed lawns. I don't think that mowing lawns at the age of 13, I really used a lot of the basic stuff that I ended up using in my career. But after that, the basics were really important to me.
Yeah, absolutely. Art, thank you so much for coming on my show and explaining your basic way and your basic definition. So thank you again for that.
Okay.
So the words comedy, HBO, Comedy Central, what does that mean to you?
Well, I started Comedy Central. It was actually called Comedy Channel when I started it, right, in the late 80s while I was a financial analyst at HBO. And I wrote a memoir about it. And I'll tell you, writing the memoir gave me a chance to kind of evaluate in hindsight all the things that happened and all the things that I did. Not just I did, everybody did. I mean, it was kind of a group effort. But I did want to get the book out there. I did want to do the memoir because Comedy Central, it's been around for 30 years. And when I talk to younger people, they say, oh, yeah, Comedy Central, it's always been around. It's always been successful. And I wanted to say that Comedy Central was not always successful. I mean, when we first started it, when it was Comedy Channel, the first year, it was a disaster. It was a failure. I mean, I went to work every day thinking, okay, they are going to shut me down today. They're going to shut us down. They're going to fire me. I mean, it was just going so badly. The press was relentless in taking us apart. They said, it's not funny. What is HBO doing? And so I wanted to write this memoir to talk about the fact that comedy is hard, and Comedy Central took a lot of work by a lot of people and almost didn't make it.
Doesn't it sound like that when you're starting a brand new business? It's almost like that, right? When you're starting something new, you don't know where to start. You don't know if you're going to make someone cry or laugh. In this case, comedy, right? You just have to start somewhere. You think that there's a comparison, or there is no?
Well, that was certainly the case for Comedy Central. Remember, we had nothing. We had to plan this thing from scratch. It wasn't like we could say, okay, there's that comedy network over there. We'll do it like that, but a little bit differently. We were the first one, and we had to develop a comedy network, and we didn't know what to put on it. We didn't know who our audience was going to be. We were really making it up as we went along. The one thing that I kept holding on to throughout the whole process was there's going to be a comedy network in the world. It might as well be ours.
Sure.
So, and one of the reasons I started, I pitched the whole idea of a comedy network to HBO is because I really wanted to work at one. I loved comedy from the time I was a kid. And when I came out of business school, I did go to business school. I wanted to work in the television business. And I thought, why isn't there a comedy channel? That would be really fun to work at. But there wasn't. And so that's why I started talking to people about, hey, what do you think about a comedy channel? Is that something that is gonna happen, or we should do, or what would it look like? And people generally said, yeah, it sounds like a cool idea, but nobody's ever going to do it. And I say, why not? They say, well, it's expensive. It's too expensive. Comedy is very expensive. You have to have writers. Original comedy is expensive. And I said, okay, so the trick is to find a way to do a comedy network that's not that expensive at the beginning. And they said, well, if you could do that, sure. So that's what I started thinking about. How are we going to do this inexpensively enough at the beginning so that people start saying, yeah, now it is a good idea.
Yeah, thank you again, Art. But when you just told a story about age 13 and you always like comedy, right? Do you mean comedy telling jokes or comedy being a goofball?
I mean, comedy being a goofball. You don't hear goofball as a term of comedy.
Okay, so what do you call it nowadays? Okay.
But thank you for reintroducing it to me. I actually got interested in comedy because I saw it on television. I was watching comedians on the Ed Sullivan Show, which was a weekly variety show, and I saw, the Borscht Belt comedians, Alan King, and Jackie Mason, those guys. And then I thought, wow, these guys are really powerful. They're getting the entire live audience to laugh. They're getting the entire country to laugh at the same time. I mean, not the entire country, but a third of the country would watch the Ed Sullivan Show at any one time. And that was the whole idea that they could get everybody to laugh like that. I wanted to know how that worked. I wanted to do that. So yeah, as a kid, I loved comedy. And then as I got older, yeah, I guess I got in trouble a lot in school for, cutting up in class. Everybody would laugh, and even the teacher sometimes, but they'd say, you can't do that. So they'd send me to the hall or the principal. But when I got to high school, I started writing comedy a little bit, satire, actually. I got interested in satire. I got interested in Swift, A Modest Proposal. And started learning about satire. And then National Lampoon showed up, in my life. And National Lampoon was, of course, a great comedy entity, comedy magazine in the 70s when I was in high school. And they were my heroes. So I started an underground newspaper in high school where we did satirical articles about school. And yeah, we got in trouble with that too. But it was, it was fun, and it's what I wanted to do. And then I got to college, more playing around in the comedy at college, doing some sketch and no stand-up. I was not very interested in doing stand-up, but I like comedy. And of course I graduated from college and got a job as an economist. But so that wasn't going directly into the comedy business.
But let me ask you this.
Go ahead.
I'm pretty sure there's a difference, but I want to ask you, the comedy in front of a TV or television, or even a movie, it's different from a stand-up comedian, correct? And how is that different? Is it because you get a reaction right away from people versus a little delay on the TV, or what do you think?
Um, well, you're talking about the difference between what stand-up comedians do and what comedy writers do. I
Okay.
mean, and stand-up comedians are, of course, comedy writers. I mean, they hone their act,
Hmm.
and many of them write it. It looks like it's improvised a lot of times, but
Hmm.
mostly these guys and gals are trying to get a very solid act that is polished,
Hmm.
so that when they get out on stage, they're not making it up. Now, of course, there's exceptions. I mean, some comedians like to make things up. They like to deal with the audience and improvise a little bit. But for the most part, they're thinking about what their bits are and what they're going to write down. Comedy writers, if you're talking about sitcoms and comedy movies,
Hmm.
I mean, each of those things has its own kind of
Flavor.
structure, rules, and there's a way it's done. I mean, sitcoms, man, that goes all the way back to the Honeymooners and I Love Lucy and those great old sitcoms, and they really set the standard for and the stage for how sitcoms got done for the next whatever years. Of course, now we're in the age of Netflix and streaming, and you see all kinds of new ways to do sitcoms. Single camera, meaning they look more like movies.
That's right.
They're not done in front of a live audience. So, yeah, but it's all comedy. It's all an attempt to make people laugh. And it's all an attempt to make people laugh because it's important for us to laugh. It's important.
But all the comedies that I grew up with back in the 70s and 80s, the Three's Company, Mork and Mindy, Dick Van Dyke Show, all the I Love Lucy.
That was the 60s, the Dick Van Dyke Show.
Was it 60s? Yeah, I think it was 60s. Yeah, but I saw the reruns, obviously.
Right.
But when I saw those shows, it was quite different as to today's comedy. For example, Friends and what is it, Full House, the one on Netflix. So what are your thoughts on those?
Well, it depends on your point of view. I mean, some of it's different, some of it's the same. I mean, sitcoms, it's a situation comedy. They got to put people in situations that are kind of funny. I Love Lucy was always trying to kind of get around Ricky and get on stage.
Get on stage, right? Exactly.
Be a performer, and that was kind of like the standard thing. And I think that's a good example of setting up a comic situation that you can use and build around. I think Friends was also, they built their comedic situations around relationships, really.
That's right.
Among the
six
friends and the six friends there. But a lot of the same rules applied. You wanted to get a situation where somebody knew something that everybody else didn't, but and that could in and of itself create a comic situation. Because they had to keep that information from them, but everybody was looking for that information. I mean, that's what sitcom writers do. I mean, they try and build comedic situations that are going to work, that they can hang jokes on.
Yeah, absolutely. Let me ask you this question before we get into your book, if you don't mind. Is crying easy or making people laugh is easy?
You know what? It's an important point because in entertainment, really what you're trying to get is an emotional response ultimately. So you can start with the easy ones. Porn is easy. You get an emotional response pretty quickly. And then horror is pretty easy too, because you're scaring people to death, or jolting them. And that's relatively easy, not as easy. And then you get to drama where you want people to cry. And then you get to comedy. I think that's the hardest myself, but just one man's opinion. Getting people to laugh is hard. So, but the ultimate goal of all these entertainments is to get an emotional response from the audience, because that's what the audience is looking for. They want to be entertained.
Like, for example, if I'm in a hangout place and I'm saying a joke, it could be a hit or it could be just a flat joke and no one laughs at it, right? So that's considered, I guess, stand-up comedian, isn't it? And being flat right in your face. What are your
Well,
thoughts on that?
you're talking about dying. You're talking about
Yeah, yeah,
when a
that, yeah,
comedian gets up there and
yeah, yeah,
talks
yeah, yeah.
and just bombs. Yeah, there's a lot of reason comedians have bad days, but it's not always because their jokes are bad. It may be just where the audience is that night, the way they're relating to the audience. Again, I'm not a stand-up, but
Yeah,
I
yeah,
watched
yeah.
a lot of stand-ups. Listen, you want to tell a joke, you want people to laugh. If they don't laugh, you know, it's like a tree falling in the forest and
That's
nobody's
right.
around to hear.
That's right.
So, yeah.
So about your book, let's talk about the constant comedy, if you don't mind. So how did this whole book started? I mean, obviously you mentioned it in the beginning of the episode right now, but was there? Did you write the book first, or did the title come first?
First of all, the entire title is Constant Comedy: How I Started Comedy Central and Lost My Sense of Humor. And I didn't really intend to write the book when I started. I was just writing some memoir,
Hmm.
and one day I decided to do a story about something that happened in comedy,
Hmm.
and I liked it.
Hmm.
And I had a writing group, and they liked it, and they
Hmm.
said, "Wow, you did that stuff at comedy? We didn't know that. That's cool." And
Hmm.
so I said, "Yeah." And they said, "Well, why don't you write more about Comedy Central?" So I did. And then after a while, I realized, well, I had the makings of a book. And again, the reason I wanted to write the book, and it's a memoir, by the way, it's not a history.
Hmm.
It's really what happened to me as Comedy Central was starting.
Hmm.
How it started up and all the things that happened to me. And it's very honest and it's very personal. I found out that when you write memoir, you have to really turn yourself inside out. You really have to be
Hmm.
frank and honest about what you were feeling, even if it doesn't make you look like a hero. And believe me,
Hmm.
many times in the book, I don't look like a hero. I talk about being nervous, scared, upset, uh, um, because that's what I was feeling at the time.
Hmm.
People always go through those things in business.
Hmm.
And I realize that, part of business is portraying or projecting kind of power, intelligence, uh, and a certain air of certainty about what you're doing. But even though you're projecting those things, that doesn't mean and that's really what you're feeling. And that
Hmm.
doesn't mean you're always sure of what you're doing. There were lots of times, as I said, that I thought, man, this comedy thing is not going to work.
But but
But I
Art, let
got
me.
through it.
But if you don't mind, let me ask you this:
Sure.
were you more of a victim when you wrote this book? Victim in the sense that it's like because
No, I
everything is
was not a
all.
victim. I was not a
Okay,
victim. I
okay,
don't want to
so
overstate that. Listen, the book, the book's a memoir. It's got funny stuff.
hmm,
It's got sad stuff. And it really tells a story of how I ended up pitching comedy to HBO and how they ended up saying, okay, yeah, let's do that. And what
hmm,
happened. So no, I wasn't a victim. Victim is a long way from what I was. It was a great opportunity. I was
hmm,
so happy that HBO said, "Yeah, let's look into launching this," and then
hmm,
they did launch it. And then we, fought very hard and worked very hard to make the channel successful. I was there for 8 years, and then more people. Listen, I didn't make the channel successful. There
of
was a
course,
huge number of people making the channel
sure,
successful. It's 30 years old now. I guess 31, and
30, yeah, hmm,
and there's been hundreds and hundreds of people that still are working on this thing, and over the years, it's been really spectacular. It's become a
hmm,
great comedy brand.
hmm,
So, what do I take credit for? I take credit for pitching it. Saying, look, the world really needs a comedy network. I
hmm,
don't know why there isn't one. HBO can be good at all this stuff. Let's do it.
hmm,
And Victim, no, they gave me a job in comedy, and I didn't know
awesome,
anything about comedy
hmm.
other than I liked it. But I was not in the business of comedy when I started.
Awesome, awesome. So, Art, let me ask you this. Obviously, you did say that you pitched it, so that was your high time that you have felt that you've kind of made it. But was there another moment in your life that you have worked in there that you felt that I this is my mission and this is what I'm going to be doing for the next X amount of years?
I mean, I think that every job I took on, I kind of felt personally involved with it.
Hmm.
More so with comedy, probably because I pitched it, and I really felt the weight of the project, the business on my shoulders. Because if it failed, first of all, a lot of people were going to be out of business, and I felt responsible because, out of jobs because I had pitched it and I wanted it to work, and a lot of people were working on it. But that was probably the most personally I took a job. I mean, I really felt it personally. But after that, I went on to work at other channels, and you got to put everything into it if you're going to make it work.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Thank you again, Art, for answering that question. But let me ask you a fun question, if you don't mind. Um, Charlie Chaplin or Woody Allen?
Charlie Chaplin or Woody Allen?
Hmm.
Well, that's apples and oranges. How about both? you know, um, I did a show with when we first started Comedy Channel about the earliest comedians. You
Hmm.
know, Buster Keaton, Chaplin, Fatty Arbuckle, those guys. They
Hmm.
were brilliant, brilliant comedians. And I think that anybody in comedy or anybody interested in comedy today, young, old, or indifferent, should really pay attention to some of those comedians. Um, and I came to love them. A lot of it was physical comedy, and physical comedy is very important. Woody Allen, kind of a different flavor because I read his stuff in his books. He did Without Feathers, and he did stories in the New Yorker all the time. I mean, that was more of kind of a verbal approach to comedy,
Hmm.
and certainly had an impact on me and lots of other people who are doing comedy, writing comedy, or thinking about comedy.
Hmm.
So um, it's really both of those people that you mentioned, Woody Allen and Charlie Chaplin, are very important to comedy.
So let me ask you this here. Mel Brooks,
Love Mel Brooks.
amazing person,
Yeah, I put a
amazing
quote of
director.
his in the front of my book, by the way.
Yes, yes, I saw that, and then that's why I'm asking this question. So, if you take Mel Brooks' product, the all the stuff that he's done in the past, and you put that in today's world and release it, do you think that people are gonna take it offensive? Because there are certain jokes which it doesn't really resonate to the environment today. What are your thoughts on that part?
Well, comedy's, I mean, we're sitting here in a very tender moment for comedy,
Yeah.
uh, as you know, because people are particularly sensitive
Hmm.
to slights and intimations of prejudice. It makes comedy harder. It really does. I mean, I think I
Yes.
think one of the things that it's great about comedy is that, and what comedians do is they kind of show you the world through their eyes, and by doing so, they make you laugh. If we tell comedians they can't do certain things, they can't talk about certain topics, they can't broach certain areas, then we're really kind of limiting our ability to see the world through their eyes. Mel
That's
Brooks, yeah, he did The Producers, which is a fabulous movie, and in it was Springtime for Hitler. And I remember my father being very kind of put off by that
hmm.
because Hitler. There's nothing funny about Hitler, right? And
Hmm.
but Hitler wasn't the joke so much as Mel Brooks was trying to tell a story about some guys who were looking for the world's worst play, and they
Hmm.
found it because some idiot had written a play called Springtime for Hitler in the movie,
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
they thought, okay, it doesn't get any worse than that. They're going to close that play in about 10 seconds. So it was in the service of the comedy.
Hmm.
It was in the service of the comedy. But nowadays, if you say Hitler or you mention something on stage or in a movie or whatever, and people get offended, they're more likely to turn it off or shut it down. And that is tough. That
Hmm.
is tough on comedians and tough on writers.
Hmm.
I think that what comedians do best and comedy writers do best is they walk up to the line, and sometimes they cross the line.
Hmm.
And if we don't allow them to cross the line once in a while, we're not going to get their best.
Yeah, I mean, all the movies that I grew up with Police Academy, Porky's, Bachelor Party. I mean, those were easy comedy, and those were great comedies. But when I was trying to play that, let's say recently, it came on TV. There's some few audiences they didn't really resonate to it. So I think the environment is very different, as what you have mentioned too. So I think it's very different on that. What are your thoughts on that part?
Well, first of all, listen, not every movie, every comedy, or every drama for that matter, is going to hold up. Some
That's right.
don't. You
That's right.
watch geez, when I was a kid, I saw this movie. I thought it was fabulous. And now I didn't even see what I thought was so great about it. I
Yeah.
think that's true of some comedies. And then the fact that, you're talking about Porky's and Police Academy, those are called stupid comedies. And they were stupid comedies at the time. They were, really made for a particular audience, and that audience still exists.
They do. Yes.
See also fraternities, but again, they were crossing more lines than
Than regular comedy. Yeah.
no than a lot of comedies or a lot of movies that are made today. I mean, but you know what? Society changes.
Mm.
Society goes through a lot of changes. I think it'll swing back too. I think that the way comedians are really being taken to task now for dealing with subjects that people don't want to deal with, like you can't say that, you can't talk about that.
Mm.
I think that is limiting. I think it's bad. I think I hope that in years to come, people stop doing that because comedians have a point of view and comedy writers have a point of view. And why do we want to shut down their point of view? Why do we want to not hear what they have to say?
Yeah.
I mean, one of the greatest ways, and I mentioned this earlier in our conversation, one of the greatest ways to communicate is through humor. So if you've got a point of view and you lecture somebody, that's one way to do it. You may put them to sleep. You got a point of view and you're kind of talking about it in a comedic way, you're getting people to listen. Even if they don't agree with you, they may laugh. And then they may consider your point of view a little bit differently. So, again, it's all in the service of connecting with people and entertaining people and making people laugh. But as I said, sometimes some parts of the audience will take offense.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Art. And before you leave today, what are you going to be doing for the next 5 more years? Because you've done so much, you've seen so much, and you're writing this book or written this book and you're selling this book. And so what are you going to do for the next 5 to 10 years at least? And what is Art Bell going to be doing?
Well, listen, there's a lot in the book that I like to talk about. I like to talk to students about it. It's about entrepreneurship, which is starting a company within a company. And I found that young people are really interested. Young people in business are really interested in what the book has to say about persevering, taking an idea from nothing to something, finding ways to stick to a project as it's not when it's not doing well. And also just, how important it is to get your ideas about innovation across in a company. Even if you're at, very low levels in the company, you want to keep people informed of what you think could be or should be done. And I think corporations should really constantly encourage their employees to innovate and bring those ideas to management. Anyway, so I hope I get to talk more about that with people. And also I like writing, so I'm going to write more books, or I'm writing a book now anyway. So that's what I'm doing. I'm retired from business and I'm writing pretty much full time.
Yeah. Art, I will make some arrangements to make this book and sign it by you and send it to me, because I'm starting a bookshelf with all the people that I speak with, and I want to cherish that too. So
Yeah,
thank you
right,
again,
right,
Art.
right.
So before you leave today, do you have any quick words to all my viewers, and how was your journey on Back to Basics?
Well, I've enjoyed our conversation. Quick words. Comedy is important. I will say that comedy is important, and humor is important in business. It greases the wheels of business, as everybody knows, and it's worth paying attention to and
Mhm.
thinking about.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Art, thank you again for coming on my show and supporting me on my the small podcast for season 2. And I started this last year, so thank you again for all your support and coming here.
Well, you're absolutely welcome. I will mention that if people want to read my book, they can go to Amazon and look up Constant Comedy by Art Bell, and there it will be.
Yeah, awesome, awesome. Thank you again, Art.
Thank you.
So, guys, we spoke with Art today and we talked about comedy and constant comedy, that is, right? And we talked about all the basic stuff that he's gone through all the way down from when he started this whole Comedy Central and what he's put into this book. So, guys, as usual, as always, there is a quote from the day from Back to Basics, and hopefully Art will like this quote. And the quote is, "Behind every great man is a woman rolling her eyes." That's what usually happens, and somebody actually said that, and hopefully he'll like that. So, guys, as usual, as always, what do I always say at the end of my episode? Everything in life goes back to basics, and that's what we did today, guys. Guys, you take care, God bless, and keep on commenting all my episodes, and it will help me to understand that you are listening and you're supporting me in all the way. And the three things happens in every episode, including this one, which is content, the guest, and definitely the host, which is the best. Guys, take care. God bless. And I will see you next time on Back to Basics. And thank you again, guys, for being on live and supporting all of us and Art. And it's been great. Thank you, guys. So, Art, thank you again for being here.